I know from personal experience that thin wrists are frustrating. There are so many watches that I'd love to try, but I just know that they'd look enormous on my wrist. These larger modern sizing trends usually leave me with very few options outside of women's watches. So that's where this watch comes in. This Linjer Automatic is advertised as being the thinnest ETA 2824-2 watch in the world. I've had this in my possession for a while now, so I thought might as well do a video on it considering that no one else has on YouTube. I recently reviewed the Quartz Classic model from this same brand. Overall, I thought the watch was well made, albeit a little boring. It still felt like a premium quality fashion watch rather than a real watch, if you know what I mean. This automatic was released more recently and feels like their attempt to break free from that label and appeal to a slightly different crowd. As with their Quartz watch, this appears to be made in Hong Kong, and once more, the build quality seems pretty good. Size-wise, this watch has a diameter of 38mm with a depth of 8.4 without the domed glass and 11.6 with it, with a lug tip to lug tip size of 44mm. So overall, it's a relatively compact watch that fits my skinny 6¼ inch wrist very well. The case is constructed of the ever popular 316L stainless steel with a high shine finish throughout. The design is fairly classic and nothing radical, though I do like the relatively flat case rear, which features the exhibition case back. Something else of note is the lugs. These are unusually positioned as they sprout out from the case, marginally overlapping the bezel. I can't say I've seen this before, though, unless you were really looking for it, you probably wouldn't notice. Is this a positive or a negative? Personally, I don't think it makes much difference, though I'd probably prefer it if it just sat in line with the main body of the case. I think the case looks attractive overall, but I do think it would look even better with slightly wider lugs maybe, and some brushed sections too. I've been coming across a lot of these fully polished cases recently, and it'd be nice to see something a little bit different. The crown functions reasonably well, and its small size suits the aesthetic of this watch. While it does have some grip, ideally I'd like this to be a little sharper to aid adjustments, especially when you've got wet hands. For the most part it works fine, though for some reason it does protrude quite far out from the case. If it sat slightly tighter, I think the watch would look more balanced, sleek and symmetrical. Perhaps even something like a recessed crown would be the way to go, though maybe that isn't really an option with this movement, which we'll discuss later. This piece definitely has a large dial considering the smaller overall proportions. From a bird's eye view, the case perimeter is very slim indeed. You get a similar overall look to their minimalist Quartz watch. It's very simple with applied hour markers and faint second markers. Now there's one little thing that's been bugging me a tiny bit, and that's the applied 12 o'clock hour marker. I don't know about you, but to me that looks a fraction misaligned. Nevertheless, there are some other nice touches here. Firstly, the dial is subtly curved, which pairs quite well with the domed glass. This is supposedly blue, but looks a lot more like a very dark navy or even like a grey-black to me. While it looks nice, it doesn't match the online pictures of this watch whatsoever, where the dial appears much lighter. I think they need to change those images so that it's a bit more representative of the true tone. Because even under bright lights, I'm not getting, that mid-blue that's online. However, it looks good overall and features the perfect amount of text. Some watches feature way too much writing on the dial for my taste, whereas this has got just a nice small amount. It's well positioned and it's in an attractive font. Now, if you watched the other review I did on their Quartz watch, you'll know that this brand does some of those sterile dial ones, though obviously that isn't the case with this one. Also, the date window perfectly matches the dark tone of the dial. I'm pleased that the brand hasn't overlooked this. Too often I see plain white dials clashing badly with darker watches and ruining the overall look. So I think this is a good choice. The slim hands are also simple but perfectly suitable for a watch of this style, albeit they lack any lume as with the rest of this watch. As a whole, I think the watch looks attractive and it's evidently a dressier piece. Though in terms of design, it's not really bringing anything new to the table. We've seen this sort of thing a lot of times before. The rear features multiple screws, though the watch only retains a meager 30 meters of water resistance, meaning this is only suitable for very light water exposure, for example, a couple of splashes or rain. Nevertheless, it's unusual to see significantly more than that on most dress watches. Covering the dial is a piece of double-domed sapphire crystal. If you've seen my watch glass guide, you'll know that I tend to favour this material when choosing watches, primarily due to its scratch-resistant properties. I'd expect a piece of sapphire in a watch costing this much, so it's nice to see that they haven't cut corners. However, in this situation, I would actually love to see what this watch looked like with a flat piece, because I think it could potentially look better. They've marketed this watch as being specifically engineered to be as slim and sleek as possible, yet when you combine the added depth of the domed glass on top of the case, it isn't particularly slim at all really. Combined with the large dial, the raised glass just leaves the watch looking a tad bulbous. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. A flat piece of sapphire would not only be cheaper for the brand to use, but in my opinion would just give that intended slim look that they're going for. If you have some watch knowledge, I bet you could change this out yourself, though the curved dial and hands would probably give some unusual results. Nevertheless, I think this factor is somewhat subjective. Let me know what you think. At least the sapphire will offer you good performance. The 18mm strap included with this watch is of fantastic quality. Linjer is first and foremost a leather brand, so it's hardly surprising. The strap is supple and smooth and features a butterfly deployant clasp to further aid durability over time. I'm positive this will last for years and years, and you likely won't ever need to replace it unless you wanted a different look. If you did want to alter the band, the quick release spring bars will also prove handy. And as nice as this strap is, I think I prefer the overall look when this is sitting on a Milanese bracelet. I think this look suits my style better and gives the watch slightly more visual structure. I much prefer wearing it on that, and I don't know exactly why. The key feature that also powers this watch is the Swiss ETA 28242 automatic movement housed within. This excellent, reliable 25 dual movement comes in 4 different grades, and even the basic one has a solid reputation. The high beat performance gives the second hand a smooth motion, moving around 8 times per second. In smaller quantities, these movements are available from around £150 and upwards, and they're often found in much more expensive watches than this. It's not the ultimate movement out there, but it's a clear step up from the low-end movements used in more affordable watches, such as the 7S26 still used by Seiko, for example. And while I like the movement, it leaves me wondering. The movement is one of the primary reasons that this watch costs upwards of £400 at the time of writing. When you think about it, £400 can get you a lot of watch from other brands out there. One that immediately jumps to mind is the similarly styled Tissot Everytime Swissmatic. On Jomashop, that watch is half the price of this Linjer, has many comparable specifications, and will hold its value better if you decide to resell it at some point. Admittedly, that watch is a little bit wider and has a different movement inside. What I'm getting at here is I'm unsure that those who care that this watch has got an ETA 2824 inside it would even be looking at this brand in the first place anyway. I'd imagine most would be looking at more horologically significant brands, given they clearly must care about watchmaking in some regard. As a result, I think this watch might do better with a more lower end movement inside so that they could sell this at a lower price point. Especially if that replacement movement could enable an even slimmer design to go along with that sort of Bauhausy look. However, that's not to say that I don't like the watch, because I think I do like the watch. It's comfortable to wear and looks pretty good. The specifications are strong, though the design is quite plain. If you like the look and are willing to splash out this much on a micro brand, you probably won't be disappointed, though I can totally see how some of you would not be able to justify spending this much on a virtually unknown brand.